Well, hello. My name's Mandy and my channel is Mandy Sorts It Out. Welcome. And I hope you're doing good. I'm going to do a review of my spending last week from the 8th to the 14th of March. And they'll follow that up with a little conversation about some increased expenditure and also about my battle with the BBC. So, for the week of 8th to the 14th of March, I didn't have any income and I spent £261.59. I had 3 standing orders go out my housing budget, my electric at £45.81, my water £18.24, and my broadband at £28. And that came to £92.05. I spent £41 on sending flowers to a person in a different country. I had 2 incidental payments coming to £12.62. That was 2 books. One of them was £6.60 and one was £6 and twopence. One of them was a book that's being read by my book club in Jersey, and I couldn't get it from the library or the Libby app or any of the free ways I normally try and get it. And another was a book that I'm reading in one of my 12-step groups. Then I spent £115.92 on my son's graduation. That came to £261.59. Just to explain about the graduation payment, because it's not what I said I was going to spend. It turns out my son does not want to get a room to be bought for him as a graduation present. For some reason, this took a while to come out, but it's come out now and is absolutely fine. So I have booked myself a cheaper room at a cheaper place that's a little bit further away. And I'll have to think about something to get my son for his graduation. For the month of March, I have got income of £1,544.73. I give myself a budget of £221 a month for food, incidentals, petrol, toiletries and cleaning and phone. And so far this month I've spent £58.53 on food and incidentals, and I have £162.46 left. That's not bad halfway through the month. I am very aware that I'm in the last 2 months of my budget before the end of year, because my year runs from 1st of May to 30th of April currently. That's the year that I'm focusing on. And I have some big expenditure coming, which I will go through later. So let's look at my year budget. So far this year, I've had income of £17,097.92, and I have spent £15,761.32, leaving a sinking fund of £1,336.60. I'm trying to adjust all these budgets so that they hit zero at the end of the year. The only thing I need to talk about is that for some reason, one of my food spends last week, which I'd put into the week spending, I'd put into the month spending, somehow didn't find its way into the year spending. If you're really on the ball, or if you're one of those people that numbers just click with you, you might notice that there's a slight discrepancy in my figures this week. But that's what it is. I've now included that food spending in my yearly budget. So my council tax. I've had my council tax bill. It's quite weird because I saw an article from a councillor in the local paper saying that council tax had gone up 2.5%, and that was an average of 8p a week. And I've got my bill and it's gone up 4%, and it's about £1 a week. And I'm on the lightest council tax band, band A. So I'm not sure what the councillor was talking about, but there you go. So my council tax is a few pence lighter in April, because that's the payment that rounds up all the odd pence per year. And then from May it goes up to £101 a month. So that's £4 increase, which is doable. I was expecting an increase, so that's fine. But let's talk about my budget for my car service. I've got £343.97 in my budget for a car service. And I got a call from Toyota. My car is a Toyota. And whilst talking about the service to them, I said to them I was thinking of going to a private garage. I said, but can you quote me what it would cost if I go through you, just so I know? She quoted me a cost, if I have the service done by Toyota, £449.85, which is over my budget. But she reminded me that if I have my car serviced by Toyota, then I keep a warranty that is ongoing with Toyota for up to the age of the car reaching 10 years, and my car's 8. And that warranty covers a number of things that go mechanically wrong with the car. And I know my sister had a mechanical fault with the car. She took it into Toyota. It was in this 10-year warranty. It got fixed completely free. So it's definitely worth keeping that warranty going. And even though it means I might be paying a bit more for the service at Toyota, if it keeps that warranty going and something goes wrong with the car, then it could be sensible to have that in place, because that will save me money overall. And it's very difficult to know if it will save me money or cost me money. But if something goes wrong and I've let that warranty slide, I will be very upset with myself. Also, I don't know if it's going to be any cheaper if I go with a private garage. I don't know a private garage. I don't know if any of the garages around here would be recommended. I don't know if my car, which is a hybrid, is more expensive to service than other cars. So I started thinking seriously about whether or not to get this car serviced with Toyota. And then she said, we can quote you for a 3-year servicing plan if you like. And I said, yeah, quote me. So she put me through to this guy who said it'll be £1,200 and something. Yeah, I'm tempted to do it. I'm tempted to do this 3-year servicing plan and have my services at Toyota for the next 3 years. I only need to do it for the next 2 years, though, to get this servicing plan. So maybe I will pay this one-off fee of £449.85. Of course, there may be more expenses on top of that. Depends if there's anything that needs fixing on the car. Obviously, I'm trying not to spend as much money as possible in my monthlies, because if I can save some money on my monthlies, that can go towards this car budget. Also, my graduation budget. I may not need to spend anything more out of that until closer to the time, depending on what present I get my son for his graduation and booking the trains and all that sort of thing. So I might have some money in there that can go towards the car budget. Oh, this is getting complicated. I feel like I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. But I really, really want to make sure I come in under budget at the year end and achieve this. It's been a challenge I've worked on for so long, and I've worked so hard on it. I really want to achieve it. But at the same time, I don't want to get a cheap service on the car that might not end up cheap and then lose this warranty just to try and get to the end of the year without breaking my budget. I want to be sensible about it. So, let's talk BBC. So, I have always had a BBC licence. When I first left my parents' house and went to live on my own, I had a black and white TV, and I had a black and white TV licence. If you're not in the UK, if you want to watch television in the UK, let's just start with that roughly. You need a TV licence with the BBC. The BBC is not the only channel in the UK, but the law is written that if you watch television, you need a BBC licence. And the way I'm talking about like that is because the law has changed. When I first moved aside from my parents, the way the law was written was if you had TV receiving equipment, i.e. a television, if you had TV receiving equipment, you needed to have a licence. And that was the way the law was written. And I did have a TV, so I needed a licence. But I got black and white TVs and paid for a black and white licence, which is so much cheaper than a colour licence. And it was quite hard getting black and white TVs. When I first moved away from my parents, it wasn't. You could rent a black and white TV, and that's how most people did. They rented their TVs. Only, wealthy people bought their TVs. So I was renting a TV, a black and white TV, but I think something happened to that TV. I couldn't rent a black and white anymore. They stopped doing it. I could only rent colour. So instead of renting a TV, I started looking for a second-hand black and white TV, and I found one. I don't remember where I got them from, but I found one. Didn't last that long. Found another one. Didn't last that long. And then someone said to me, I can give you a TV, but it's colour. But it does have an issue. I was like, okay, what's the issue? Anything red shows up as blue. I said, well, I've been used to black and white, so that's not going to bother me. So I got this TV, and it was really funny. Anything red showed up as blue, and the redder it was, the bluer it was. So candles would be blue. Women's lips would be bright blue. It was kind of like a deep turquoisey blue as well. And I was fine with this. In fact, watching horror films where the blood is blue suddenly became an awful lot easier than it was when the blood was red. But it did have a bit of a problem in that I started to read red as blue in real life. And things would happen like I would say, oh, have you seen so-and-so's boyfriend's here? Oh, I don't know him. Which one's he? He's next to the lady in the red dress. I can't see anybody in a red dress. That one there, the red dress with the hat on. The only person I can see with the hat on is wearing a blue dress. Oh yeah, the blue dress. Because I'd look at blue and I'd read red. Because to my mind, I knew blue meant red on my telly. So blue meant red in real life when I saw that particular shade of blue. So yeah, eventually I got a good TV. I got to the point I could afford a good TV, and I had a TV all the time while I was with my ex and raising the kids. And then 11 years ago, I saw Noel Edmonds on TV. He was putting in a bid to take over the BBC, and he was asked on the news, and I'm going to try and see if I can put a clip of that in here. Quite exciting, something new to do on YouTube. If he had a TV license, and it turned out he didn't, and he said he only watched catch up. And I was thinking, but if you've got TV receiving equipment, you need a license. So I looked into it, and you don't. The law had changed, probably because of these things, because this is TV receiving equipment. A smart fridge is probably TV receiving equipment. But anyway, the law has changed. Now you have to have a BBC license if you watch live TV on anything. On anything. It can be on a Xbox. I don't know if Xboxes can watch live TV, but if you watch live TV on anything, you need a TV license. Or if you watch the BBC iPlayer, which is the BBC's catch-up system. If you watch that, you need a license. So I thought, okay, me and the kids hardly ever watch TV, and when we do, we often watch catch-up, so I'm going to get rid of my license. And what I didn't realise, because I've been paying the license for years and years and years, is that when you pay by monthly direct debit, as I had been, you're actually paying 6 months in advance. So when I cancelled my license, I got, 75 quid. It was a bonus, I can tell you, because by that time my husband and I weren't together. I was on a very low income. I was really struggling for money, had 2 kids, it was a good bonus. Having to live still in the marital home, which was really expensive to keep up. Anyway, I have bought the license at times since then. I think I had it for a full year once. But another time I just got it for a couple of months because I had friends coming over to stay with me, and they wanted us to all sit down together and watch, what's it called? It's a sewing program where everybody makes clothes. It's not the Sewing Bee, is it? Something like that. But anyway, they were very into that. They were watching it and keeping up with it. So I paid for a license, and I had to set up a direct debit to pay the monthly fee. You can't just buy a month's TV license. I don't know why. So I had to do that. And then when they left, I actually thought, I want to keep watching the end of this program. So I watched till the program finished, and then I called the BBC and I cancelled my license and got a refund of about £20 because I'd paid too much. Because the first few payments you do on a direct debit are double because you're paying for that 6 months in advance bit. And even though I'd explained I only wanted the license for a short while, I'd still had to do that. Anyway, I keep filling in the forms saying I don't need a license and sending them in. And as soon as I moved up here, that's what I did. Well, the other week I was watching a YouTube video, and on that video they were talking about the TV license, and they said that you can watch the iPlayer to watch channels on S4C without paying a license fee. And I'd never heard this before. Now, S4C, or Sianel Pedwar Cymraeg, is the Welsh language channel. And I watch it because I'm trying to learn Welsh. And I have a Fire Stick. That's how my TV gets on the internet, because it's a very old TV that's not internet connected. So I have a Fire Stick, and I have found that I cannot watch S4C on my Fire Stick. It just freezes. So I thought, right, I'll watch the iPlayer. And I spent a whole day on the phone with the BBC, because when I went to use the iPlayer, it says, have you got a license? And I've confidently pressed no, and it wouldn't let me proceed any further. So I contacted the BBC and said, how? I know I can watch S4C, but how do I watch it? Problem was that the two people I spoke to didn't think I could watch S4C on the iPlayer. One of them insisted I couldn't, and then I asked to speak to someone else, and in the end did speak to someone else, and they didn't even know what S4C was. So eventually I got the information that yes, I could watch the iPlayer to watch S4C without a license. It was absolutely fine, and that what I should do was say, yes, I have got a license. And I said, well, you're telling me to lie. I don't like that very much. And they were like, yes, we're looking at changing it. We're looking at putting up something saying, do you have a TV license, or are you only going to watch S4C? You know, something like that. Anyway, I got an email the other day saying that my notification that I didn't need a TV license was expiring, and I needed to renew it. And I needed to answer these questions about whether or not I needed a TV license. And one of the questions was, do you watch the iPlayer? Now, there was a little asterisk on this question, and the asterisk went down to below, and it said, you don't need a license if you watch S4C. Well, that's great. But the question isn't, do you need a license to watch the iPlayer? The question is, do you watch the iPlayer? And I thought, the logical answer to that question is yes. I watch S4C on the iPlayer. But if I press yes, it's going to flag me up as somebody who watches the iPlayer and doesn't have a license. And that could cause me lots of trouble, because the staff at the BBC don't seem to know that you can watch S4C on the iPlayer without a license. So are the people that enforce a license going to know that? Probably not. And I thought, do I really want to get myself into this world of trouble? Also, the email that I got said I need a license to watch the BBC, and it didn't have an asterisk on it. It didn't say unless you watch S4C on the iPlayer. So I put a complaint into the BBC. This seems a bit crazy, perhaps. I'm not even a license payer with the BBC. I have no relationship with the BBC. I feel really like, as I'm not using their services, I'm only trying to watch S4C, which is made by Channel 4. It seems a bit crazy to complain to the BBC, because I just want to piggyback on their services so I can actually watch the programmes I like on S4C on my television, as opposed to on my phone, which I have been doing for years, because it's the only way I can watch them, because as I said, S4C doesn't work very well with the Fire Stick. So putting a complaint in seems a bit mean, really, because I don't really have any real relationship with them. But at the same time, if you're going to regulate, and I used to work in regulation, if you're going to regulate, you have to be accurate. You have to say what the law actually says. You can't threaten people to prosecute them for things that the law doesn't say. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. So I do feel quite justified in what I'm doing, even though it does feel a bit awkward at the same time. I've also referenced that their staff don't seem to know about this S4C exemption. Well, because it is a point. I don't want to be prosecuted. I don't want to end up going to court, because although the law doesn't say I need a license, nobody seems to know that, so I end up in court. And I don't think it's outside the realms of probability I mean, look what happened with the post office and all that. People got prosecuted and sent to jail and all sorts of things for things they hadn't done. I mean, one woman committed suicide. And I have seen how aggressively the BBC prosecute people who don't have licenses. I saw that they prosecuted a woman who had a mental handicap, and her license was paid for by the council, and the council forgot to pay for her license, and she was prosecuted. Not the council, she was prosecuted. So I don't want to put myself in that position. So I'm not watching the iPlayer at the moment, and I'm not filling in that form because I'm wary that filling in that form will open me to prosecution. We'll see what happens with my complaint. So thank you very much for watching my video all the way to the end. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Bye.